All right, guys, it's Bryan. Welcome back. I want to talk about a couple things real quick with you on this video. If you guys are new to the channel, please hit that subscribe. It helps us grow and get the message out there. And right now, in general, we're talking a lot about fitness, wellness, mindset, but we're connecting it through this lens of energy, vitality. So really vitality, this connection to the energy of the human being, the human body, and our chi, our life force, right? This is all interconnected. We cross into spirituality, mind, body, and spirit, right? But we're bringing you guys a practical lens. We're giving you something that you can use. So I want to talk about a client today. One of my recent newer clients having some great success. So down from about 227 to about 214 in the first month, okay? A little bit of kind of like some fluctuation, but in general, that amount of time and that amount of weight loss is a really, really good movement. Now, she did start off with some fasting. We've been focusing a lot on just building the regular routine, just kind of all the stuff I talk about in my other videos, getting obviously that activity level, getting that strength resistance training, and focusing on the macros and nutrition, just starting to build that all together. And it's making progress. It's having a positive impact. And that is really, it's really the simplicity of it. It's really the key, right? It's like we tend to have this overcomplicated view. Just as an aside, like if you did 3 good workouts, like for instance, you did some kind of upper body pull, like a pull up, you did some kind of leg exercise, like a squat or a deadlift, and then pick, either a bench press, upper body pushing, or, squat, lower body push, like you pick 2, 3, 4 of those exercises and you do those well over the course of several years and you keep progressively overloading, you're going to get stronger. You're going to see a ton more muscle mass. That's really what it comes down to. Progressive overload, getting enough rest so that the muscles can recover so that next time they can actually increase that overload again. And they can handle that overload. They can handle that. And again, the concept is just small increments, right? It's not about going from 0 to 100. It's going 1 week up, just a small enough increment that you can actually push that volume, push that capacity, right? In some regard, whether it's increasing some of the reps, increasing some of the weight, eventually you're increasing both dynamics. Okay, I've talked about this also. And again, it's just always, to me, been the simplest way to look at it. It's always how I trained. It always made me relate more to some of the old school bodybuilding than the new school science-based stuff. But what I want to bring to it is also, just like, I'm going to come back to the story in a second, but I want to bring to it just, the full picture. So I think if you can get that down, that's generally, to me, always the baseline. I still am going to have people work on challenging their nervous system in different ways. And I still think that, especially if you've gotten to the point where you've gotten comfortable, you've gotten consistent, that progressive overload, that workout is easy for you, well, then by all means, you have the capacity, you have the ability, especially once you get towards those plateaus, right? So that's where you can start to dynamically activate into different exercises. And I've always said it depends on your goal. So for a lot of people, their goal maybe is to look better, get stronger. And again, just progressively overloading, focus on a couple specific exercises, right? That's not rocket science, but that is going to give you results. Okay. Now, the long-term question for me has always been, well, especially someone who had injuries, do I want to just feel stronger, look stronger? Or do I want to actually be able to do nuance better? And that came down to movement. It came down to understanding injury, rehabilitating injury, the connection between the nervous system, the spine, our muscles, our muscular tissue, connective tissue, all of that interconnected, right, as a larger system. So we can look deeper into all of that. And again, it's really just comes down to the individual. That's why I don't really say the prescription is a one size fits all. I've always had that approach, especially as someone who's coming from an athletic background. Like, you don't necessarily train 100% the same way you do for hockey as you might train for basketball, right? You're going to train to your specialty. I'm a musician too, right? Someone who's a metal shredder on guitar is not going to practice and train their approach the exact same way that someone plays a flute and is more like into like a style like jazz, or someone that even plays a guitar but they're more of an acoustic guitar player and they play chords. And it's a very different approach depending on the person and what they're trying to bring out. So always remember that, guys. It's coming back to the unique individual approach, but we can't always find these overlapping and basically simplistic guidelines that essentially work because we biologically all have the same kind of base building blocks and design, right, to the human being, to the human body. But there's this infinite variation within that design. That is the beauty of, you know, God's mystical and majestic, the mystery, right, itself of God, of nature, of things beyond what we're capable of easily grasping. Okay, so it's the it's that mystical side, right? Anyway, bringing it back to the story. Okay, there's a bit of a tangent, but I've talked about that stuff. It seems like people are kind of right now, you know, talking a lot more about that too, because it's like we've kind of gone back full circle from, like, when it got, I guess, overly, you could say, kind of like science approach was really big for a while, right? It still is, as far as, like, that's part of what comes with evolving, learning more. There is a lot of scientific stuff that's valuable, but again, as humans, it's always the case that we've just learned most directly through this, like, apprenticeship, through this, like, proximity, this immersion. And that is just, again, going back to the nervous system, that's how it learns. Okay, it learns through action, through failure, by feeling its way through things, learning. There's a lot to unpack here, and we're going to do a bigger we're going to do a longer video just on that specifically, kind of a bigger exposition, a deeper dive into that concept, because that in of itself is pretty important. But I wanted to bring it full circle to what I was talking about as far as the client. Okay, so back to the client. Been having some great results. Now, one thing that was really interesting, having conversation today, is she's mentioning that, like, last night, she had a moment. She was dealing with some stuff, going through hormonal cycles as well, which could contribute to, especially for females. And of course, I work, with men and women. I'll talk more about that too. But essentially, when it comes to just the baseline, right? The fitness side of things. And if you guys haven't followed the Wellness Network, you can check out my other channel, as I'm starting to kind of grow that baseline component. But here we can get a little bit more into some of the other things I like to talk about, some of the esoterics. And again, also, I want to be able to have an area specifically of this channel where I eventually build something to give, especially you guys, some more specific things, some more specific insights, especially men as you get up over 40. There's a lot of stuff we can bridge in there: men's sexual health, men's overall vitality. But for general purposes, when I talk about training, when I talk about fitness, and particularly looking at the Wellness Network, which is kind of the overall conceptualization that this all formulated out of. But again, that's more like a long-term progressive thing, and the way things kind of played out right now. Like I said, I'm building both things simultaneously, very interconnected. But for the purpose of right now, this channel, okay, we're talking about client. Okay, again, getting back to the key significant component of this conversation. All right, so what happened was she fell off a little bit, had a moment, and said, I'm having a craving. We've seen this great result so far this month. It's totally, just totally normal thing, guys, because people, we're not perfect, right? So what happens? She called me up, told me, oh, I had some pizza, and I kind of fell off, and for a second, it's same thing. I was expecting kind of to hear her espouse some of that emotion that it brought up, and kind of give her that component of what the next step is, which is basically you let that be in the past and then you keep moving forward. But what made me really, really proud is that when she called me, she said, well, you know what? I actually just got back from 2 hours at the gym. I woke up and I felt really guilty. So, it was just like, that was what triggered her to know, like, okay, well, I went out, I ate pizza last night, had a bunch of, carbs and heavy stuff that I wouldn't normally want in this program, in this nutrition protocol right now, as I'm making this transition, this transformation, right? She could identify that. But instead of allowing that to overtake her, which is what happens to most people, right? The momentum suddenly gets lost very, very quickly. And then it's like, oh, well, I already failed. I might as well go eat another bad decision or another pizza or another, go have some more beers or go do this, go fall down that track further. But again, I've always said, when I always, tell clients, it's just, you immediately just get back to what you've been doing, right? You don't allow that mental state to drag you back to the old identity. You allow the new identity to pull you forward to what you already know you should be doing. So she got up. The coolest final part of the conversation of the story is this, guys, okay? She told me it was weird, okay? This is how she said it. It was so weird. I felt like my body just automatically got up and knew what to do and knew what it wanted to do and started doing it. And I said, oh my gosh, this is amazing. This is something I try to describe to people for years. But until somebody goes through that process, has this level of transformation, it's very hard to explain that concept, what that really feels like. But I said, I was like, wow, that's incredible. We're making amazing progress. You're on this great path towards a huge, impactful transformation, not only for yourself and your own life, but eventually to help other lives, right? So anyway, really amazing story. Was just super, super happy to hear that, and proud of her for just getting up and going and getting after it and putting in those 2 hours in the gym this morning. It's like, okay, cool. Like, you made a mistake, you put in the work, but also you're learning from it. And that is the key. And one of the big takeaways was just that, was like, once your body starts adapting, right? And I explained this to her. I was like, remember a couple, weeks ago when we were first starting, or when we had the conversation, or, when I do talk to somebody about this concept, as, you think you're like, oh, you're having to motivate yourself. You're having to push through this, and you project it out to be every single week is going to be the same thing. But often this is the case. And this is what I try to actually tell people, because this is the most transformational thing, is that actually once you get into the habit of doing the thing the right way, well, now that's what your motor memory is on. That's what your body's habit automated system is on, right? It's already on that path where now all your little workers, all your little biology in there is working for you. Instead of, overly wanting the craving, it's like you got all the good biology, you got all the good microbes starting to help you and shift your mindset away from that, like, parasitic craving. I call it the alien voice, right, in the back of your head. It's that other entity. We'll get deeper into that too, because that is 100% real, right? Your body is multiple consciousnesses fighting for control. The parasitic forces, the fungal overgrowth, the parasitic overgrowth, that stuff will take over people's consciousness, right? But once you start to shift it the other way, the positive energy, the positive microbes, they actually start to pull you to where they want to go, because they're like getting up, they're going, they're like, all right, not only, do we know that this is now the new habit and it's making the body feel better. It's like now the consciousness is actually pushing, because it's like, that little switch of, like, instead of feeling like, oh, I fell off and I'm now having to push myself even harder. It's like, oh, okay, well, you made a mistake. Totally acceptable. It can happen. But instead of making it unacceptable, like, kind of just allowing the mistake to become the new habit, overtaking, the good work that you put in, the good habits that you started reformulating, rebuilding, rewiring, instead of just letting that all slip back and fall away, you actually just use that new momentum. And again, in that sense, as you do this more and more, you're building this kind of fail-safe, this almost like reflex towards what your body knows is good, because it's like now those good microbes are they're kind of provoking you to say, oh, like, get up, help us with this. We're already getting on top of this, right? Because you've already put us into gear. You've already started to activate the body. So they're like, all right, you've already started getting this going. Let's not let this slide. Let's get up. Let's get you going. Let's get you activated. Okay. So a bit of a long story, but describing kind of a shorter event. But I really wanted you guys to get the full picture and also take away some of those key concepts to, I think, what just a simple conversation, how impactful that can be. So in the example of the client's shoes, now you're feeling these things and you're able to identify them better. And also, talking about, how creating that toolkit to help you, so that once you identify it, now you have the tool to go ahead and work with that energy, work with that shift, work with whatever it is, that whether it's that craving or it's that moment of like making a mistake, learning how to dust yourself off, just get up, get after it, right? So that's what it's all about. Most of life is just learning to get out of our own way. And our mind does so much to affect this either positively or negatively that it's almost like it's unfair that we don't even realize it, right? It's almost criminal that we're not teaching this in schools as the only important thing from a young age is how to manage your biology, your mind, and how the mind and the body, the physical body, is still connected to the self, right? Another huge thing, right? It's like either people are living all in this esoteric self and they're all brain and they just don't even care, like deny thyself that to that degree, the flesh, that degree that it's like, now it's like same thing. Like when that moment comes, it's like, you have a hard time now kind of motivating yourself, pushing yourself, right? But if you look at it as like, well, rather than completely denying the flesh, you're denying the craving, you're denying this lower parasitic, the lower self, right? Which is what that life force represents. That's what those fungal and parasitic overgrowths represent, is the lack of discipline, the lack of being able to keep yourself in that higher state, right? Okay, so again, we will keep going more into this stuff because I want to, again, make it practical. I want to break stuff down for you guys. I know that's a bit of esoteric with the practical stuff, but remember this, the practical thing is just when you make the mistake, don't dwell on the mistake, get up, do what you're supposed to do. And once you get to the point where your body and your mind is starting to propel you towards the thing that you should be doing when you make a mistake, you're already building a change on a biological level, right? Because your body is now desiring the correct thing, okay? So a lot of this whole thing is just teaching your body to desire the right things rather than feeling like you're constantly in this stuck in this state, where again you identify with having to constantly resist, overcome, rather than get into the flow of the thing that is better for you. Okay, another way to think about this, and this was a key thing that I also want to come back to. With regards to getting off of nicotine, which for me was a major challenge. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in my story as we get deeper into the channel, because I want to help people if that's something they're trying to do, get off nicotine or quit smoking. The first time I tried to do it is what I want to talk about. The book that I read, is it how to not be? I can't remember. I think it's the exact name. I'll drop it in the video here. I think the guy's last name is Carr, maybe. But anyway, I'll drop in the, so we'll make sure we have credit in here somewhere. But the book, How to Not Be a Smoker. Thank You for Not Smoking. I can't remember. That might be a movie. But anyway, it's basically one of the more renowned books. But the simple concept is that you're changing yourself on an identity level. So rather than, I have to resist this urge that's constantly pulling me, right? That's the parasites in your body constantly pulling you towards that sugar, that urge. You're trying to reprogram on the identity, which would be, again, changing the microbiome from acidic to alkaline, meaning you want life building rather than life destructive things. But again, I digress. We'll get more into that deeper. But once you're in that life building, energy state, okay, now that type of energy is flowing, you're starting to build that vital energy more. You're going to desire things that want to keep that vital energy flowing, right? So again, you're training, and literally on a biological level, your microbiome is also now wanting those things. So you're training yourself, to feel totally different, to feel good, and to feel aligned with those positive decisions, to the point where it's now like, instead of if someone offers you a cigarette, the old way, or the way that doesn't work is you don't change the identity and you're just resisting, like, I'm trying not to be a smoker, right? Well, the person that's successful is going to say, oh, that's fine, I'm not a smoker, because they've already accepted that the new identity is who they are. If you're not a smoker, you're not going to feel a craving for a cigarette, right? But remember, on the microbiome is the key, because, and that's the same thing, for example, for someone who's craving that nicotine, right? Their microbiome is used to it. Their physiology is used to having that quick hit of nicotine, right? It literally, physiologically, it's going to help your body relax. It's going to get that circulation increased, even though in the long run, it ruins your circulatory system, ruins your lungs, right? Again, without going too deep into that, we'll do, if you guys really want more information on anything specific, please drop it in the comment below. I want to, help as much as I can, as fast as I can. And the whole key is just to build this up so that I can be doing this and focusing on this and working with you guys, working with clients 100% every day, full time. And not to say, I'm a musician, do lots of other stuff, but right now it is been a transition process. And so for me, that is, that's the main focus right now, is I'm trying to get you guys a ton of information. I'm trying to keep building this channel, and, outside of the channel itself, continue to build the clients in person, online clients, and to the point where the snowball builds. That's the goal, guys. So hit that subscribe, support the channel, help with that process. And obviously, the more we can be doing this, the more people's lives we can help. Want to connect with other coaches, creators, across the board, and interesting individuals within. It's like everything has become very interconnected, right? So it's almost like similar to the fitness world, right? It's like no one's super into just fitness. Most fitness content is crossing over into mindset, into other stuff. So what I mean by that is just, we live in a world now where there's so much information. People are so stimulated mentally that, I think a lot of people have kind of downloaded a lot of that basic information that maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago was still, through the advent of social media, seeing videos and images and stuff everywhere. Now it's coming out into the world. But now people are very aware of so much more information. The average person, they're more aware of things like that. For example, just kind of basic aspects of fitness, or they've just seen, it's been around so much, they've seen so much of it. So my point being is that, there's a lot of different connections within this fitness wellness world that link into so many other areas, whether it's spirituality, psychology, there's an esoteric side, there's a scientific side. This is also why I wrote the book, The Art and Science of Mindset, right? It's literally right in there for you guys. It's, it's understanding this very fundamental paradox of the nature of everything, of life itself. The flow formula. Flow is, I think, something that people are still learning to understand, because, again, another portion of why I wrote this book was to help people see the flow formula, help people see the art and science of mindset as one interconnected thing. So we tend to think about flow states as like a muscle memory state, or something where, you're in the no mind and you're just in the flow like an athlete. But really, the way I talk about it is, I actually talk about flow in the concept from both perspectives. For instance, that's more like the artistic side. That comes from like the hours, the time. I talk about in the book the skill set of challenging yourself at close to the exact same degree of your capability. The challenge is very much right there. So you're always, challenging yourself just at that, edge of your capability. That's part of what brings the flow state about. And the reason, why I wanted to add this in, because what's important to me is that there's an aspect of the flow state that's also a science, where I think you're understanding that it's not just something you're totally checked out, but you're actually present within that process. So this concept of presence, right, where, again, another way I've talked about it is the big I and the little I, okay? So, and that's, I play a lot of music, love reggae music. That's just very, very ingrained into the culture of reggae and Rastafari. That's why we say I and I, okay? So very simple. When you're talking about the world, when you're talking to anybody, when you're talking about yourself, you're talking about that person in front of you, your mind, your thoughts, your ego, that little version of the self that is finite, but you're also talking about something beyond the small version and the finite version of the self, and that's the bigger self. Okay. So again, this relates back to this concept of flow. Like the little self at times still needs to be present and, kind of in the frontal aspect of like, sometimes you're doing things that you haven't done before. You haven't even built the muscle memory. So how do you even get there? Well, can you still be in a flow state while you're witnessing and you're using your mind and you're aware and you're kind of present? Absolutely. So it's both extremes. I think a lot of people should read that book, The Art and Science of Mindset. I'm really hoping to, be able to get that out there more and more and more, just because I think it would be so incredibly positive. There are a lot of things that people have heard before, but I really think it combines in this same way we're talking about this discussion. It combines a whole new side of the spectrum for people of how to think about mindset, and gives people sort of both sides, the art and the science. Because again, in the same way, Michael Jordan, he's not thinking about running, taking that leaping, layup, with 2 seconds on the clock. Like, that's that kind of old school way of looking at it. But I think, in the book, I think, I really bring about a lot of other aspects. And that's kind of also this approach to like training, right? It's kind of almost regressive, going into little things, little steps, little components where you can't bring that awareness now to that thing. And then once you have an awareness there, where awareness there, it's similar to doing like an isometric. Okay. If I have a bad range of motion and I go through each range of the motion and make the muscle fibers fire through the full range of motion, right? Hold it isometrically here, isometrically here, isometrically here. That just little split second, that slowing down, that momentary isometric, for example, is bringing more awareness. It is bringing more recruitment to the muscle fibers, which is more awareness of what's actually happening, right? The mind is now connecting to the body more. And that is awareness in a nutshell, right? Because the reason why we lose awareness is because, if you're trying to pay attention to every little thing, every single moment, right, you kind of get overwhelmed. And so this is where it all ties back into that meditative quality, that meditative state, because once you step back and you're not so affected by all the stimulation, now you can actually watch it. You can be aware of it. Okay. You can listen to things going on in the background while you're listening to your thoughts, while you're having a conversation, while you're paying attention to your posture, while you're noticing, am I breathing? Am I holding tension in my body? And the more your mind gets used to this, the more it becomes its natural state, right? But the more you get away from it, now you're just compartmentalized. You're constantly in your head. You can only go from one thing to the next to the next. You're thinking about this, but you don't even notice, right? Something happening right over here next to you till the last minute. Guys, situational awareness is what I'm going to finish this off with, because this is one of the hugest things. It comes down to social awareness, but situational awareness, because there's an actual safety component to this. The world is crazy. The world is intense. So developing this not only is good for your own self, but obviously when you go out into the world, when you're in places now, where it's chaotic, you're now slightly more programmed to just be aware, right? Someone who's worked on this, literally every time they walk into the room, every time they enter a new space, a new street, a new place they've never been, it's like their brain is doing something far different than the average person, because the average person is just so overwhelmed. Whereas someone who's situationally aware is thinking about things from a different context. First they're looking at safety, then they're just looking about reading the energy, reading the room. Social interact. This is a huge one for so many people. I think men and women, but a lot of you guys, that's that social sense of like being aware, right? It's not easy, especially for us guys. This is something, I feel like I was, maybe gifted to quite a degree, but it's been something I've learned so much, failed, had to develop, right? You have to go through those reps, like, and granted, you can learn a lot from other people. I'd say that's been one thing that's been really helpful, is learning from others to accelerate that process, that awareness. But in terms of a social situation, being socially aware to sort of pick up on what's going on. So it's almost like, you become the mind reader, right? It's just like, oh, well, How many times in a situation have you thought, well, if I could just been more aware, if I could have just understood what that person is thinking, or like a woman says to you guys, like, oh, if you could just, why can't you just read my mind? Well, you know, I get it, like on the other side of it, and we can talk more about that side, like, having this insane expectation for people to know what you're thinking, right? But the other flip side is, what's the solution? Just learn to read what people are thinking. It's pretty easy, actually. I guarantee if you guys think about it from that perspective, right? And I'm not just saying, using it towards dealing with the ladies and all that, right? Or vice versa, but dealing with guys, right? If you're a woman watching this, but I think just in general, if humans did start to take this perspective just a little bit more in general, of being situationally aware, reading the energy, trying to tap in to what is actually just there. You have an innate capability that you don't realize to tap into, signals. Just like there's a signal out there, a radio signal, and it beams from the transmitter to the receiver, and the receiver can pick it up out of the air. You guys are your biology is exactly the same. Okay, so I'm going to say that, I'm going to leave it at that today. You have great abilities to tune into your environment. So again, I don't want to go too deep into the masculine and feminine dynamics right off the bat with that, but I think that's important. I think it's a conversation that's out there, and there's a lot of people talking about that stuff. I tend to kind of right now, like, my main focus is on like what I'm bringing you guys, the mindset, the fitness, but it does all tie together. So the mind, body, spirit does tie to this concept of being, again, situationally aware, but also, again, you can use that tool to gain favor with others, because if you start thinking about, like, oh, well, what is that person thinking right now? Well, guess what? You now have this uncanny ability that most other people don't have to, on both sides of the coin, right? If you want to give someone an amazing experience, amazing customer experience, and you're tapped into that, it's almost like, what they're trying to say, you're getting it out there to them first. And then, like, oh my God, this person gets me. I want to work with this person, right? you know and again, I know there's some people probably hate on that, like, oh, it's so stupid, like, we can't read people's minds, blah blah blah. Okay, fair, that's fine. Everybody's entitled to their own opinion, their own approach. And again, I'm not saying you should just be able to immediately tap in like an X-Men out here, X-Men level. And but the concept I want is what I'm trying to open your minds up to. And I think you'll find out, guys, it's actually pretty insane how much once you just start thinking that way and try to tap into what's going on, you can really see, and you can even feel things coming from other people. Sometimes you might even be able to literally be like, well, it kind of seems like that's what's going on, right? And then the downside is, like, you can't just throw this out there like you're, God himself, right? It's like people talk about how, oh, I'm God. It's like, if you were God, you could create a planet or a universe, or, you could just wave your hand and have $1 million. And so, that never made sense to me, how people kind of go so far. Yes, we are a part of God. God is within us, and we are within God. Absolutely. But yeah, the concept that you can just, wave your hand, right? So this is moving and create anything you want. I get that, right? That's a little bit, it's like, that's where the disconnect comes in. But this might, to some people, seem like it's crossing into that like miraculous territory. But what I want to say is that, again, don't underrate yourself for your own capabilities, your own skill sets, right? Because that's what it really is. It's a skill set. You can tune into that on the very basic level. You're learning to walk into a room, be situationally aware, assess what's going on around you. Are there threats? Is there danger? But also, you're starting to tap in, like, oh, does that person, that person looks like there's something going on with them, that could lead to a great conversation. That could lead you to a new client, or vice versa. You could just notice, like, oh, there's something up with this person. They have a super big ego. Like, I know I'm not gonna, try to create all this extra friction with this person. maybe I'm going to actually first find a way to kind of try to connect with them, something that's familiar to them in their life that maybe I can also relate to. But, I'm thinking about them from their perspective of like, oh, maybe this person's really into fishing. Well, I fished definitely in my life. I'm not necessarily a huge fisher, but I could talk about my experiences, my childhood, going out with my dad and my brothers, sitting there on the jetty, throwing a line, or, whatever. It's just, you guys know this stuff, okay? It's intuitive in all of us as human beings, because when someone does it to us, we feel it. We know it. We know when somebody actually fucking cares, man. And that's what it comes down to. At the end of the day, because that's what you're showing people. You're showing people that, you care enough about yourself to keep growing and keep looking deeper within yourself and uncovering those secrets. And you care enough about other people to want to actually, help them. We have this like, this main character syndrome energy in the world where it's like nobody wants to participate in the way the world once was, which is communal. It's family, it's give and take. And so the me generation, that's fine, but it's leaving people completely. Um, people are depressed, people are anxious, people are not happy, people are worse off, really, with all these, incredible things we have in the world. And so it's just kind of insane to see, right? All right. Anyway, guys, I'm gonna cut it off there for today. Pretty long rant. Kept it. Looks like under 40 minutes. But I wanted to tell you guys that story. I wanted to give you guys some information on how to start building that awareness, tapping in, challenging yourself. Again, you don't have to be a mind reader. You don't have to overnight just be able to, do anything mystical on that level. But I would challenge you to open yourself up to see if you can start thinking more and actually reading the situation, right? When I played sports, we had something called read and react, right? It's like if I could see the defenseman was not paying attention and moving over here, and this guy was able to get behind him and he was getting free, and I could find a lane to pass the puck as he was going to break free. It's like, boom, I'm going to shoot him the puck. He's breaking free. I hit him with the pass. He's on a breakaway, hopefully scores a goal, right? But that's called reading the play, reading and reacting to the situation, seeing ahead of where things are going to go, and then influencing it because you're able to see it and now you're able to act upon it, right? So hopefully that helped tie it all together for you guys. Just some simple things, but getting a little bit, deep and a little bit esoteric. And but the reason why I do like to do that, because I think it really helps tie everything back together. And again, people are more into that now. People want to hear the deeper aspects to reality. We are in the information, like the science and the information, the surface level stuff there's so much of it, AI, chat GPT, that people are starting to be like, well, actually, yeah, I'm more interested in this other sort of, kind of like almost less scientific, but almost less, you could say, black and white, right? The artistic aspect of it is that it's a palette, um and it has flavor to it, so that's why I said it's something that you can develop. You can look deeper, because you might have experience in your life that's different from my experience that helps you to be able to read these types of people better, or have experience with this in this type of room, or around this type of energy better, but in general, if you can feel confident going anywhere, into any room, into any situation, and ultimately be able to bring that same thing forward, well, now you have the capacity to do great things, right? Because you can influence people. You can now create an impact out there into the world. You can share things that can potentially help people to become better themselves. Now they can, right? It's a ripple effect. Now they can influence other people. Now that that positive wave is building, and especially when it's aligned, and when it comes within this grid of kind of this natural order or organization. Now it's aligning with nature itself, with what is already there. Again, so that's coming right back to that same point, right? You know if you're noticing something about that person, and there's other aspects that may seem to fit into the equation, like, okay, that person just went through a difficult change in their life, maybe they got out of a relationship, and then the next time you see that person, You can see they're not acting like their normal self, or they look, really kind of, you can see it on their face. They're wearing that heavy energy. Sometimes it's just like lightly being able to acknowledge it, and then, that person it's enough to have an impact is what I'm trying to get at, right? You can really shift other people, and before you know it, that impact will come back to you. That's the whole key, right? Whether it's monetarily, whether it's through recommendations or referrals, or people just giving you, good feedback, or sharing information about you to someone else who now wants to come back and do the same thing. Either, tell other people about this cool thing that they learned from you or experience, or, give other people a referral from the work you've done, the things you've helped them to improve. So we are interconnected in this way, and this is the beauty of how business was really set up to work. It still has that capacity, and that's what I've always said. Like, changing the world is more about, it's like an impersonal thing. As much as we want to make it personal, it's about how well do we organize, how well do we come together as, the real ones, the real people out here promoting that shift, promoting that change. All right, guys. So yeah, like I said, I was about to cut off about 10 minutes ago, but we went a little bit longer. Stream of thought. I'm getting a ton of stuff out to you guys because, again, this is me getting that platform, anytime I can, any way I can, throughout my day. I'm trying to continue building that content because that foundation is going to help so much more in the future. Also, it's obviously building the channel. We're getting more and more subscribers. Thanks to the new subscribers for tuning in. So again, guys, much love. Last little quick review is just remember, so much to do with just maintaining that alignment within yourself, not, not being afraid to, right? Not being afraid to take that risk, or to, to pursue, for instance, that intuitive aspect of yourself, right? Like, you may think like, oh, okay, I just picked up on something about that person. I want to start a conversation, but then you start thinking about it, second guessing yourself. So same thing. It's all about being within that moment. It's all about that improvisation of kind of like, can you, you know, can you in the moment when you are called upon, go ahead and run with that opportunity? And thinking about these simple things, dialing these simple things in, these will have such a powerful impact on your life. So hopefully, guys, like I said, you took some good stuff out of that with you today. Let me know if you have questions, thoughts, comments below. If you want to work one-on-one, okay, if you want to join the free community just to, get linked up, please feel free to go ahead and hit the link below as well to do that. And yeah, we'll see you guys next time, all right? Thanks for tuning in. Peace. Bless.